Hi, I'm Andrew, and welcome to this presentation on income and wealth distribution in the U.S. and the inequality that exists in this distribution. To start, I'd like to apologize if I sound congested. I've got a bit of a cold right now. Anyways, before we begin, let's discuss the difference between income and wealth. Income is the flow of money that one receives. This can be a wage or a salary. For example, if you make $200,000 a year as a doctor, then that is income. Wealth, on the other hand, is the value of assets owned by a person minus all debts. Now that we know the difference between income and wealth, we can talk about how these two are distributed in the US. Income and wealth inequality can be graphically represented with a graph that we learned in class called a Lorenz curve. The x-axis of this graph is the percent of households, while the y-axis is the percent of income or wealth in a society. The straight diagonal line is the line of complete equality of wealth or income. Therefore, the closer the Lorenz curve is to this line, the more equal. As you can see, wealth inequality is usually much greater than income inequality. Income inequality has also grown between 2004 and 2014, as the orange line for 2014 is below the cyan line for 2004. Now we can use the Lorenz curve to calculate a commonly used indicator of inequality, the Gini coefficient. This is done by taking the area between the diagonal line of equality and the Lorenz curve and dividing it by the entire area under the line of equality. Looking at the graph of the Gini coefficient for income inequality in the US from 1967 to 2011, we can see that the income inequality has grown steadily in this time, and the current value is higher than any other developed nation. What is the cause of this growing inequality? According to the New York Times article, The Smartphone Have-Nots by Adam Davidson, there are two main arguments for what could be behind this growth. The first of these reasons is technological change. With technological change, the demand for highly educated workers who know how to use this technology has grown, leaving unskilled and uneducated workers behind with less demand and therefore less income, making a bigger gap between the skilled and unskilled. On the other hand, opponents argue that this technological change has existed for many years and therefore does not explain the rapid increase in inequality recently. Instead, they argue that the government has created a new equality with policies that help the rich, such as limiting powers of unions, weakening welfare, and giving tax cuts to the rich. Both schools of thought, however, agree that this increase in inequality is a problem that must be addressed. When examining income and wealth inequality, some shocking statistics can be found. The YouTube video by Politizane discusses the great disparity between what Americans believe the wealth inequality in America is versus what it actually is, as well as the disparity between what they believe it is versus what they believe it should be. The video explains that the top 1% controls 40% of the wealth, which is more than what 9 out of 10 Americans believe the top 20% should control. Therefore, this top 1%, this top 1% owns half of the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, while the entire bottom 50% owns only about 0.5% of these assets. Clearly, the ability to invest plays a huge role in wealth inequality in America. So, what exactly can be done to stop the widening of this gap and reduce inequality? In NPR Planet Money's podcast, What to Do About Inequality, economist Branko Milanovic argues that the same methods used to combat inequality back in 1920 cannot be used effectively today. Encouraging students to stay in school longer will no longer be as effective. Instead, government should try to improve the quality of public education. He also states that tax reform to fix the problem would be unlikely because of mistrust in the government to do the right thing with the money. Also, union growth is unlikely. He does say that the people who are getting richer in the midst of this growing inequality are the owners of capital. Therefore, a way to combat inequality would be to have the middle class increase their ownership in companies by making stock more available to them. This would help with wealth inequality, as the middle class would be increasing their assets and providing another source of income. John Devine offers some additional ways to fight this growing income inequality in his article from the U.S. News and World Report, How to Solve Income Inequality. One of his proposals is to invest more in women. This is due to the fact that families with the highest percentage of poverty are the households that are headed by a single mother. With more education and opportunities, these families can raise their incomes and escape poverty. Another way to fight this inequality is by promoting entrepreneurship for the less wealthy people by making microcredit more available to them to start small businesses. An example an example of a provider of this microcredit is Kiva, which has made a big impact in poverty-stricken nations like Haiti. Finally, one of the most logical ways to combat inequality is to redistribute wealth more effectively with more progressive taxes, a concept we discussed in class. The US technically has a progressive tax system, but it is far behind those of other developed nations. Of course, socialism is not the rational answer to these problems, but the widening gap between rich and poor must be addressed, as it threatens the democratic principles of this country. Thank you.